Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, we'll take your phone calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. But it has been a while since we've talked to our friend from Colorado, Krista Huff, joining us now. Krista, good morning.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I am living the dream, ready to roll. And what a rocky December and November it was for your beloved markets.
Oh, it sure was. So I'm glad it's behind us, and I think everything from here will begin the recovery process.
Well, I can remember many of our conversations. You said a correction was a coming. Does that mean we're talking about a bear market and people should be, taking their money out of the markets and putting it under their mattresses?
Well, since the market already fell, it's too late to take the money out. This is actually the time that one would be buying if one were wise. So back in January, 2 days before our first stock market correction of the year, I told MarketWatch that the S&P was going to fall 10%, and then it fell 9.9%. But then it rose to new highs again. So twice during last year, the market rose to new highs. So yes, it just fell, but you know what? The longer-term trend is the market recovers and reaches new highs over and over again, so people should take advantage of lower prices and buy.
Well, boy, that's like a...
I know they're afraid. They're afraid.
Well, Krista, you go back to 2008, and let me ask you the psychology behind it, because,
sure.
You and I grew up when GM was the Cadillac of stocks. Now GM, again, is hitting on hard times, but... I watched that every day before GM was done. It was amazing to see, an American car manufacturer just go under and such. Stock, becoming a penny stock and such. So, do you still believe that there are, 80 or 70 or 80% of people that still aren't in the market?
I don't know the percent of people in the market. I know that a little more than half of American adults own stocks in general. So those adults saw their investments performing extremely well over recent years, continuing into 2018, all the way into September, reaching new highs again. So yes, we've had another downturn, but everyone who owns stocks knows that the market advances and then it pulls back, and then it advances again and it pulls back, but each advance is higher. I mean, this isn't rocket science. All you have to do is look at a chart on stockcharts.com and key in like a 10-year or 50-year time period, and it's obvious that the market goes up over time. And so if you're sitting there and looking at it and you're saying, well, when should I buy? You know what? The obvious answer is you buy during the downtrends, because then you're going to get more shares, and then the market returns, and then you have more money than your friend next door who panicked and sold. There's nothing difficult about that concept. So the only hard part is people's emotions, because people have this group mentality, and unfortunately, we have a news media that scares the hell out of people, more so in 2018 than I have ever seen, and I've been investing for 30 years. So, I'm sorry that the news media does that, but if you can turn off your emotions and use logic, you can fare well in the investment world.
Krista Huff joining us now. If people want to get a hold of you, what can they do? I mean, not literally get a hold of you, but you know what I'm saying.
I don't care if they send me an email. I'll respond. I write a stock market newsletter at CabotWealth.com, and Cabot is CABOT, and they're the oldest publisher of stock market newsletters in the U.S., and the one I write is called Cabot Undervalued Stocks Advisor, and I focus on growth stocks with excellent fundamentals that are undervalued for whatever reason. So right now, of course, there are many of them that are undervalued, and through writing, I hold people's hands. I encourage them. I tell them logic. I tell them to let go of the emotions and do this logical thing, which should, in theory, enhance their stock investments. And I do not buy and sell and buy and sell. If I buy an undervalued stock and it goes down, well, then you know what? At that point, it's more undervalued. Why would I sell it then? So I hold the stocks long enough so that the people who own them will make money on them. And then at prudent times, I say, okay, I'm going to sell it now, and here's why. And then I replace it with other undervalued stocks. So I try to make the whole process seem as calm and logical as possible so that people can hang on during these rough times.
Indeed. Krista Huff, let's talk a little bit about the Fed and the president. Is it really just as simple as the Fed tanking the economy?
I'll tell you that I see no logical reason that the Fed raised interest rates a couple of weeks ago. The classic reason would be if inflation were hitting in troubling numbers, right? Because the Fed's primary job of controlling interest rates is to control inflation. So if inflation is rising, they raise interest rates to try and pull the economy back. However, inflation is nowhere near scary numbers. And so that reason wasn't there. The other reason that the Fed might raise interest rates is a normalization process. I think you need to be a policy wonk to remember this, but during the Obama years, interest rates, the Fed's rates were way, way below 1%. They were below 0.5%. And if you look at a historical norm, that had really never happened before. And those rates stayed that low for about 7 years. And then I think it was during 2015, the Fed started raising rates again heading into the next presidency. So I think the Fed might just be trying to bring rates back up to a historical norm despite the fact that inflation is fine. And you know what? If you're going to do normalization, you want to do it during a strong economy when the economy can handle the disruption by the Fed. So to a certain extent, the Fed's move makes it clear that the economy is very strong. So I'm not pleased with what the Fed did, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not worried about it either.
Krista, let's get back to the media. They seem to be cheering against the economy, which, again, you go back to what they did for Obama, a change in tune.
You want me to get political, Kevin?
Well, not political, but I mean, you did start it with the media, so
the economy. Okay, first of all, the economy is booming. The tax cuts, the deregulation. There's so much going on. The GDP growth, the employment numbers are fantastic. If we could see something like this even once every 3 years in my lifetime, wow, what a great country this would be with so many people working and thriving. We haven't seen this in a long time. So you would think that throughout 2018, the vast majority of headlines would be celebrating all of these excellent numbers and policy decisions. But because they're attached to President Trump, the media, which, it's no surprise to anybody, the media hates President Trump. And so they have to take every single statistic and twist it to make it sound as negative as possible. And that is what we're experiencing. I have been investing for 30 years. I have never seen anything like this. It makes me angry, but there's nothing I can do about it other than to encourage people like, okay, we can still make money in the stock market despite whatever it is the media is saying, and we are going to make money in the stock market, and here's how we'll do it.
Well, we don't hear that from the media, do we?
No, we don't, but I'm not the media, am I? And even though I write for stocks, not every writer is a media. If I were writing about interior decoration, I would be an expert in interior decoration, not a writer per se, right? So I write about stocks, but I am a stock market professional and, relative expert versus anyone else out there. So the stock market is going to recover, and we could reach new highs as early as the end of 2019, although it might be 2020 before we reach new highs again.
So your advice to weather the storm?
My advice is to prudently buy low, but I always encourage people, buy stocks of companies that are growing their profits. There is literally no point in buying shares of a company that has profits falling or losses like Tesla. And that's a separate story, but the entire reason that stocks go up is that companies are growing and profits are growing. So if you want your stock to grow, you want to find a company with growing profits. And that's what I do for people. I give them a whole bunch of healthy companies with growing profits on the silver platter, and they get to go shopping and pick between 30 excellent stocks and then go play golf or go do your job or go play with your kids. Don't be staring at the market every day.
It does drive you crazy.
Yes, it does.
Finally, do you like what the president's doing?
I love this president. For a decade or two, I've been begging for a businessman in the White House because people who work in the corporate world understand, A, how to solve problems, and B, that their jobs are on the line if they don't solve their problems. politicians are not oriented that way. And even if a politician comes from the private sector, once they're in Washington, D.C., they have a whole new ball game that they're playing, and I'm sick of the people playing the ball game. I wanted someone to come in and start solving problems. So boom, deregulation, boom, cutting income taxes. When does that ever happen? So I am absolutely thrilled with President Trump. I don't care if he's a brusque guy who offends people with his tweets, because I'm only concerned about his actions, not about his demeanor.
And finally, it's just, it seems to me that, again, getting back to the media, such an influence it has on people. We were told that the Obama economy was good when it wasn't. People were employed when they weren't. And yet we have this economic revitalization going on, and they're cheering for a recession. It's the darndest thing.
The whole cheering for a recession thing is scary. It's like if you were hoping that it's almost like rooting for people to die. It's sad, and our country has changed dramatically, Kevin, and it's really sad to witness, and I'm sad that my children will never live in the America that I grew up in. But the best we can do is go forth and try to make it better. So, I worked on that trade agreement for a few years ago, and the U.S. was on the verge of giving away sovereignty. The media never told anybody that, but we defeated that trade agreement, and so I'm a problem solver, and I'm going to go forth, and 3 years from now we'll be talking about some other big problem that's behind us because we worked on it.
Krista, one more time, if people want to get your advice and be calm, remain calm, all as well.
Right. They can send me an email if they like. It's Krista, Krista, @CabotWealth.com. I'd be happy to hear from them.
Krista, always a pleasure. You take care.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Take care. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye-bye. R&R joins us now with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, R&R.
Thank you, Kay Millie. Hey,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and I have it on proper authority that there's a special delivery for you since you're the monarch of the Merc. Something for the Crimson Tide versus Clemson. And if you want a Marconi Award, I would guarantee that there's not a finer voice than yours and Ray when you're tag teaming. That's just a special day.
Well, thank you.
Hey, there's a story I do have. There was a really ugly rumor cast dispersion on Brad Little in the Valley. I knew his heart a year or so ago, and I'm going to offer up this story. We have a special new minister in our fold, and it was pretty much standing room only, and half dozen or maybe 8 people got to see what I'm about to say at the near the conclusion of the service when she was being brought into the fold. Brad Little, governor, and the beautiful man that he is, got up and walked into the adjoining hall and started unfolding chairs and setting up the tables. And that's the man who he is. He is a servant of all, and anybody who casts aspersions on Brad Little just doesn't know.
Wow, he didn't have his people doing that for him?
He did that himself. What a good human being. And I won't be in the crowd that watches him sworn in, but if you do get an invitation to go to a food gathering where his family gets to prepare some of the meal, there's a potato salad recipe in that family that is above any potato salad I've ever had so far on planet Earth. And I just am honored to serve on the Millie Militia. I do have a solution for your flying. We got to get that stagecoach going. You and Petso and probably Touchdown Tommy, the stagecoach running the border. And Brewster and Caroline. Love to hear your laughter. I'm glad you're all back.
Well, blessed to be with you. Thank you.
And I got one more thing. Star Tire and Auto. Star Tire and Auto. Those guys will get her done. Bye, my friend.
Bye-bye, R&R. Okay, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So let's just keep it right here. A couple things. Slow news day yesterday. By the way, I do want to thank Larry Gebert, our friend Teresa, Julie Gebert, the folks at Make-A-Wish, Idaho. What an incredible time yesterday. And I will have to say, so many of you have said to me, Kevin Miller, you need to be more like Ray Amaya. Ray Amaya, when he's not here, he likes to hike and do all sorts of things and be in the outdoors. And I've kind of looked at the outdoors, and I know what you're going to say in Idaho and say it's overrated. But that was my first time yesterday at Lucky Peak. And first of all, I got lost, which is why I never even thought about spelling, let alone going to Pathfinder School in the Army. But going to Lucky Peak and just seeing how beautiful it was, snow-covered mountains, over 300 people there for the Make-A-Wish Polar Bear Challenge, watching and interviewing Larry as it was so cold that he got out of the water and icicles were in his hair. It was amazing. And seeing so many people representing Idaho, still America's wonderful hidden secret. Who knows how much longer it will be there. And yes, we can complain about all the new people moving in and hope they get assimilated. And, whether you're New Year's Eve at the store like I am and buying some soup or something, and the lady behind me mad because there's no hard liquor at the grocery store and she's going to have to find some other thing. We could talk about that, but what a wonderful day. And, I'm sitting there. I almost took a couple headers there because of the ice, but it was an amazing day. It was such an eye-opening experience for me. Like everybody, getting out my phone, taking photos and such. And over 300 people were there. I don't know how many jumped in the reservoir, but the work that went on behind the scenes, good to see our friend Todd Christensen from Cap Ed. Just really, when we talk about community, that was the community showing up, and it's so unique to the Treasure Valley. If you want to see the video, it's on my personal Facebook page. It's about 20 seconds of people getting out of the water, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I maybe I'll do that next year, and maybe we should all do that, and that'll be our New Year's Day event. I don't know if we can get Max or Patriot Ray, or we probably dunk Liberal Steve in there a couple times, too many. Just kidding, Liberal Steve. But it was just a wonderful event. So thank you all who participated and made a difference. Now, the government, if you were listening Monday, and maybe most of you weren't, I couldn't believe it. It seems like New Year's Eve is like an unofficial holiday. I know around the broadcast center, people were looking around going, well, not much to do today, and trying to get things done. Just nothing happened. But the government, so we did the show on Monday, and the big thing about it was the government shut down. Has anybody missed the government? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Have you missed the government? I guess that's what they would call the instrumental montage. Looks like the folks at Fox were sleeping yesterday. But the big issue now is, should the president negotiate with negotiate with Congress when it comes to the border wall, Rachel Sutherland?
Let's make a deal. That from President Trump to congressional Democrats as he continues to demand border wall funding and any plan to reopen the government. Democrats are planning to introduce spending legislation when they take control of the House tomorrow as the 116th Congress is seated. The two-pronged plan funds most of the government through September, except Homeland Security. A separate package funds that department through February 8th, and it contains no money for a border wall. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders calls the idea a non-starter. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
All right, a non-starter to you, and coming up next, what the devious little libs, otherwise known as the Dems, the Democrats, are seeking to do to derail the president. That and more with me, Kevin Miller, on not one but two stations, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Coming up, Rachel Sutherland will join us from Fox News Radio, figuring out whether or not Congress can solve the stalemate. Well, they don't want to solve the stalemate, do they? They just want to sit back and embarrass the president. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And one of my favorite topics, this could blow up the entire show in a good way. And as I said yesterday, it's always a slow news day, the first of the year. We were at the Polar Bear Challenge. Wonderful time. Make-A-Wish, Idaho. Great event. But you've got the Moms for Marijuana. They gathered at the state capitol to call for the legalization of marijuana. I don't know how many of the moms were actually there. We'll take a listen to it. We'll get your thoughts on this. They say that, mark their words, it's going to happen here on the 2020 ballot. That's what they're aiming for, a ballot initiative to make marijuana happen. Now, whether you are a fan of Brad Little, whether you're not, one thing that I am resolute in is in my belief in Brad Little, in the conservatives in the Idaho legislature that are not going to make it happen. So you can have your ballot initiative. You can do everything else unless, and maybe they'll do what they did to Ontario. They'll flood us with a bunch of free money and overwhelm the conservatives here with the pro-pot propaganda. But I don't see that in Idaho. But we'll talk about that next. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. I think it's time for traffic and weather. Have we done traffic and weather? All right.
Larry Gabbert.
All right, Larry, thank you very much. Coming up, we'll get a live report from D.C. Number one and number two, are you ready for a ballot initiative for marijuana? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Out to Washington, D.C., Fox News Radio, exclusively in the Treasure Valley on KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend Rachel Sutherland. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I hope you ate your black-eyed peas and ham hock. Is that a tradition where you're at?
Not so much, my friend. Not so much.
I thought it was everywhere for good luck on New Year's.
Or, some people eat sauerkraut on New Year's, too. So.
Well, there's that, too. Whatever works for you.
That's probably what the president, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer are looking for, whatever works for them.
Right, exactly. And we're hearing that this meeting that's going to happen later this afternoon at the White House with hopes of coming to a deal on the government shutdown is going to be held in the Situation Room. That's per White House correspondent John Roberts. And to get in there, this is normally where these high-level talks are held and where they huddled around as Osama bin Laden was killed. They're going to have to give up their cell phones. So I don't know if that's to stop leaks or what the problem is there. But our understanding is it's going to be held in the Situation Room.
Right. That's, I guess that would be unusual, right?
Oh, I think so for something like this. Again, the Situation Room is normally where top brass gathers for military type of interventions. It's underground. It is. There are no windows. I've never been in it. It's that kind of place. So, look, this is serious. We're on day 12 now of this government shutdown. People are working without pay. We're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are either furloughed or working without pay. Last check, if you call the IRS, goes straight to a voicemail that says that no one can answer your call and that normal operations will resume as soon as possible. We have tax season here in just a few weeks.
That might not be such a bad thing. The IRS won't return your phone calls for some.
Well, they won't even answer the phone, and this is the first year that we're filing under a new tax system. So good luck with that. And because upwards of 90% of IRS employees are furloughed. You have now the Smithsonian Museums. They're now closed. They had tried to stay open. National Zoo is closed. As last check, the Panda Cam was still up and running, but it may go dark as well. And the people who are going in there to feed the animals and water them are doing it without pay. They're not going to let the animals, just die off. But still, it's starting to show some of the effects of the shutdown.
Right. And I'm wondering, though, do people in the heartland feel the effects of the shutdown?
Probably
not.
Right.
I wouldn't imagine so. Say you're taking a flight, you're going somewhere. The TSA agents on the job, your federal law enforcement, FBI, Homeland Security folks, and that kind of thing, all on the job. But people in the heartland, if they owe the IRS and really do want to reach them, could feel the pinch. Also, routine food inspections aren't going on. So if you get some bad romaine, well, I mean, it could happen because they're not doing those routine food inspections.
Wow. Finally, you go back. I guess this is to prevent people from leaking, but it is a far cry from where the president and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer openly negotiated before the press.
Well, I wouldn't imagine if cell phones aren't allowed. I don't think that the White House press pool will be allowed in either. But who knows? I mean, even when Osama bin Laden was killed, someone was in there taking a picture. You remember that compelling picture. So it could be that, I don't know. I mean, that's something that is just a question mark for me, whether or not they'll allow any press in there. And then if they have this open argument the way they did in the Oval Office a couple weeks ago, it would all add to the drama of the situation. But the bottom line is, we don't know that it's all because of this, but Wall Street has been panicking. You have a situation where when there's uncertainty, it'll roil the markets and things become very uncomfortable. And I think we've talked before about the longest government shutdown was in 1996. It lasted 21 days under President Bill Clinton, and so we're almost 2/3 of the way there to breaking the record.
Rachel Sutherland, back in action again. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, our great friend Rachel Sutherland, Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. Our comment that any marijuana initiative will probably pass, probably a better than 50% chance in Ada County, Lathrop County, Blaine County, and possibly Teton County because of the spillover from Jackson Hole, Wyoming of your Hollywood and rich Upper Easterners poured into Teton County across the border from Jackson Hole. But my point is that you can possibly repeal it in the next session of the legislature. Let me give you a historical precedent. In 1942, there was an initiative passed that guaranteed every Idaho person over 65 a $200 a month pension.
I think you went over this before.
Well, I don't know if I did go over this or not. This was passed by initiative in the 1942 election, and of course the governor at the time was C.A. Paulson.
Right, but they went broke, so they had to repeal it.
Well, they didn't go broke because it hadn't gotten it completely operation. He made the argument that they would go broke if they paid it out. Now, there was no doubt about it; they would have gone broke at that time because Idaho couldn't pay for it at all. It cost in the end, the Republicans still retain control of the legislature, although it cost Paulson politically, and he lost in his race to Glenn Taylor for senator in 44. But it would be interesting to see whether or not Brad Little, if they would say that theoretically, if such an issue passed, would he have the political courage to go before the legislature and ask for a repeal of marijuana thing? And would they have enough political courage in the legislature to pass such a thing, such a thing? Because the argument would be that you're defying the people's will. That would be an interesting question.
I don't see Brad Little being about that. He seems very adamant in his stance, and usually he'll leave himself some room. But having studied the campaign, and I can remember Tommy Alquist, Raul Labrador tag teaming him, and Brad Little was staunch in his beliefs. I don't think there's that much of a liberal progressive element. Now, if you throw in big money from out of state, maybe that changes things, but who's going to champion free weed or legalizing weed in Idaho besides the Moms for Marijuana?
Well, for one thing, it has a built-in factor of loss, even with big money pouring in. I doubt very seriously that, or let's say in eastern Idaho, in what we would call the Mormon Crescent, that such a bill would be lucky to get even 20 or a quarter of the vote at best, and probably less. That would mean that any initiative would come in with a 20 or 30,000 vote deficit before you come into the rest of the state, which it's possible that the bill could carry, but it would be very, very hard to do. That's the thing that the Democrats face every time they go for a statewide election. They come out of that end of the state with a 30 to 40,000 vote deficit to start off with before they even get into areas that they're competitive. So that's the question. That's the question there. I think Brad Little would differ on it. I think Butchie Baby, our stick cowboy, would go along with it.
You're saying Butch Otter, soon to be former governor, would go along with legalizing marijuana?
Oh, I think Butch, if it passed, would turn on a dime. I don't think Little. I think this would be one of the areas that Little might differ from Butch on. But no, Butch has no principles at all. It's all about Butch and has it. I've been totally.
Well, what are you going to do when Butch is gone and you don't have Butch to kick around anymore?
I'm glad I won't have Butch to kick around. It'd be nice to have the cow manure out of the state house. And
my goodness, Hank, you're starting off the new year a little spicy.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward. For the governor's office to be hosed down in Friday. So
my goodness gracious, Hank, thank you for the call and for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Boy. Here we always start New Year's resolutions where, the Miller Show is not going to be so much smack talk. We're going to get along with everybody. We're going to expand the tent. We're going to bring folks in, and we can agree to disagree. And what is it, our second caller of the year, Hank comes in and goes after the former governor, soon-to-be former governor. My, oh, my. One thing that, and we'll be talking to some newsmakers coming up. I want to let you know this. Coming up, we're going to delve into the new year by speaking with some pretty big newsmakers in the country and in the state. And one of the big issues that I'm fascinated to find out is if and when the grocery tax is repealed. People promised it. Are they really going to, with a $65 million shortfall in the budget, which, again, I don't know how that happens. Maybe we can talk about that in a minute. When or who will champion the repeal of the grocery tax? We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll get to whether or not you agree that the state should legalize marijuana next. Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Happy New Year, everybody. KIDO Talk Radio time. Let's make it all sound official. KIDO Talk Radio time, 6:51. And we're talking a little bit about the upcoming legislature, the new governor, Brad Little coming in. How confident do you feel that the budget will be balanced? We heard, what was it, in November, December? Always, when you have a budget shortfall, it always seems to happen, at the end of the year when everybody's checked out and we're still trying to get the cobwebs out from 2018 and it's 2019 and we're thinking to ourselves, how can the state that's the fastest growing state that we purchased all this stuff, that we had a $60 million budgetary shortfall? That just doesn't happen in your place of business. It doesn't happen in your work. It doesn't happen in your life. And yet here we go. So going into the new session, you've got the new governor coming in. Obviously, people want the repeal of the grocery tax. It was promised. It was vetoed. You had these crazy shenanigans. And you're going to have some people saying, yes, I'll support it, but we've got to get it out of committee. Really? You have to get it out of committee. Well, we just can't seem to do that. Well, who controls the committee? The Republicans, right? We're the reddest of the red. You remember that. Famous words from soon-to-be former Governor Otter, right? We're the reddest of the red. So if we're the reddest of the red and we really want to do something for the people, wouldn't it be very easy to just sit back and allow that to happen? Well, unless you have the shenanigans going on, where all of a sudden you can sit there and go, well, we just can't get it out of committee. Okay, well, who's to blame? The Republicans. Well, who did we vote for? The Republicans. All right, that's one thing at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. There should be no excuse. That should be item number one, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. That should be item number one. That you should see, the grocery tax should be repealed. Well, everybody, fiddling and diddling, we've got a revenue shortfall. That's not our issue. They were elected to represent the people. That's number one. Number two, we have the Moms for Marijuana. They're going to have a ballot initiative, and they're going to legalize dope. Well, we'll get into that. And I think, there were 6 or 7 Moms for Marijuana? Is that an overwhelming referendum? Is that an overwhelming representation of the majority of the folks? No. Think about that for a moment. 6:54, traffic and weather together, 107.5 FM.
This Channel 7's Larry Gebert.
All right, Larry, thank you very much. Back to this big point, though. Thinking about the legislature and whether or not you want the repeal of the grocery tax. Most people say yes. Most people are cheering for it. Then why can't we make that happen? That should be item number one. And maybe you should do this when you're talking to your legislator, before they head off to Boise, whether it's here locally in the Treasure Valley, whether they have to live here. And that is a sacrifice away from your family, away from your business, and away from everything else to come in, to wear the suits, to wear the dresses, to sit on the committees, to vote and everything else. That's quite an honor. We don't want to diminish service, but, just like when you go to a restaurant, you expect service. So when you go to the legislature, we expect service. And what is a more compelling issue? Maybe lessening the gasoline tax or figuring out a way to fund the roads. What was it? ACHD had a thing on there where in Ada County, they were going to raise registration fees. Hey, that's great. That's wonderful. Except for vehicles in excess of 8,000 pounds. Well, those are the vehicles that chew up the roads. Not the people in the soon-to-be discontinued Toyota Priuses. Not the people in the Chevy Cruises. Or the people riding the bikes. They're not the ones that are doing that. The big rigs. And yes, we need commercial commerce. I get it. We're not vilifying the big rigs, but, then we're going to pass on the cost to the consumer. So be it. Real issues. I'm trying to think of anything else. Where are we going to have the enhanced castle doctrine? Are we going to have more rights for gun owners? Are we going to, again, look at ourselves and put things in the proper perspective when it comes to this season? And it might be a little too early, but I'm wondering if there's some type of nefarious plot right now to make sure that the grocery tax does not make it out of a committee. And the only reason why the grocery tax made it to the floor of the Senate and the House, 2 years ago, was because you had a shrewd move by a few astute, smart state senators. Think about that for a moment. And I don't mean that to upset you. No one wants to wake up to be mad. Jim is mad. Tim is mad. You don't want to, but it's something to take a look at as we have the pomp, the ceremony, and the circumstances of a new governor, the first new governor we've had in over 12 years. And maybe we'll ask this question next hour. Is it more of the same, or do you think that there is a new administration? At 580-5436. Looking over the governor-elect's staff, it seems to be a lot of Boise State graduates, which is great if you're a Boise State person. Everybody graduated Boise State. And good. It's a great institution. Wonderful academics. Like this area, it continues to grow. That's the only read I've gotten from it. What is the plan? What is the objective? Medicaid expansion? Can we really afford that? And what does that mean to the state coffers? Remember, it wasn't too long ago, and maybe those of you that have just moved in, you didn't know that during the recession, actually our income tax returns had to be halted, had to be delayed, because the state didn't have enough money to pay for it. That's no smackdown of the state. It's just we ran out of money, and that was even though Idaho had a great rainy day fund. And you know how it is. You can pull the Dave Ramsey and save everything, or you spend a little, you live a little, you have a good life, and then you've got to deal, like all of us, with the debt and the deficit. That's a big issue that concerns people going into Boise. And I can tell by your non-reaction, you're not concerned about it. So we'll move on, thankfully. All right. Fox News is next. The shutdown continues. We're not shutting down. We're just getting started. KIDO Talk Radio.